tasteMAKERS was funded in part by...
What does a craftsperson look like? Is it this? Or this? Or is it this? Is it possible a craftsperson might also look like this? Edward Jones salutes the makers who share their expertise and take pride in their craft.
In this episode of tasteMAKERS, you are going to meet a meat-devoted man who is sourcing directly from Indiana farmers and making some of the most celebrated charcuterie in the country. I'm Kat Neville, and for the past 2 decades, I've been telling the story of local food. In that time, American food culture has exploded in tiny towns and big cities from coast to coast. In tasteMAKERS, I explore the maker movement and take you along for the journey to meet the makers who define the flavor of American cuisine. In 2007, Chris Eley and his wife Molly moved home to Indianapolis to launch Goose the Market, which was quickly followed by the Smoking Goose. And it's here at the Smoking Goose where Chris is crafting some of the most celebrated charcuterie in the country.
Over the course of, I think, 10 years, I opened 8 restaurants. I started to realize that if I was going to continue to do this, I kind of wanted to do it for myself or my family. I'd been involved in enough restaurants to know that 50% of them come and go pretty quickly. Also, the margins are very tight. Labor is very difficult. I mean, just a lot of things that I had dealt with over the years, and I knew that if it truly, my money or my investment, my time, I wanted to invest in something that I thought would be there for 20, 30, 40 years. It kind of developed into more of a butcher shop and market. I mean, it's based around the butcher shop and the charcuterie and the cheese, sandwiches and all these types of things. The idea for Smoking Goose kind of came from Mother Goose being the provider for the neighborhood. I mean, to goose something is to change the way you think about something. It's confusing to people though, because most people think, so all you make is goose? It's like, nah. It's actually mostly pork, beef, lamb, a little bit of goose, but not much.
Corey and I have found a quiet corner of Sun King Brewery. This is where Oka operates.
It's a really, really cool collaboration with one of the oldest breweries in the city.
So Smoking Goose started out as Goose the Market.
That's right.
Then expanded to have kind of the meat shop with Smoking Goose. Now you have these various iterations of Oka, which Oka means goose in Italian.
That's true.
Your history, you spent years in Italy, so you bring that experience to this business. When Chris was starting out, there really were not a lot of resources.
Right.
And so you translated all of these Italian books for him.
A couple of times, it's true.
Yeah.
Every now and again I would come in the morning and there might be a document in Italian with a post-it note that said, "What?" ? I kind of got the hint that maybe we were supposed to delve a little deeper into that. And so we were able to take some of those translated pieces, some of those things that we were able to learn from the old country and really mold them into something completely unique, something completely different.
That's what makes this so exciting.
Yeah.
There is not just this slavish adherence to tradition.
Yes.
Chris understands what the tradition is, just like any great artist. You have to learn the rules before you can break them.
Exactly.
And he is creating these products that are very specific to Smoking Goose, to Indiana.
We're never going to be Italy and Indianapolis. We're never going to be France and Indianapolis. And we don't want to be.
Right.
We want to make something unique and still delicious that even though it's tipping its hat at tradition, is something that you can't find anywhere else.
I've never felt like I was fully invested as a chef. You know, like I always felt like you were trying to learn too many things. I was trying to learn too many things. Sauces, soups, curing, pâtés, roasting, braising, pastry, or all these different aspects of cooking that you're trying to learn and get really good at. And you can spend your entire life doing that and still struggle. So rather than just kind of being mediocre at 20 things, I really enjoyed just trying to be good at one thing, and which is basically the preservation of meat. Essentially practice that trade or that craft in and of itself. I really enjoyed all these different processes of preserving and curing, salting and drying and smoking, and the properties of salt, what all it could do, the amounts, time and how long, and moisture, pH, and all those really important details. In cooking, you're more focused on the actual recipe and the immediate gratification of having a dish come out maybe a couple hours later, right? In charcuterie, it's more of an investment. It's an investment in time. 6 months from now, when the product comes out in the chamber, you're not necessarily going to remember, how much salt, how long was it in there, what was the pH of the meat going in. So you got to take really good notes in that respect. I like that. I liked that long-term investment, and then also the reward of those products coming out.
When we go into Smoking Goose and we're in the different rooms, walk me through the process.
It's a really unique setup in that it is a building within a building. So it is like its own microclimate within another structure. Literally, we get whole animals inside one door, and they make the routine through all of those rooms, and out the other door comes 40 different meat treats, 40 different products. So in our raw room, where the raw product comes in, whether it's whole animals or all of the different products, things getting ready to be smoked, trimming, cutting, all of the steps that go into creating the product, making the product. From there, depending on the recipe, it'll either head to our fermenting chamber, into our aging room, or into that huge smoker. So lots of different kind of multiple steps with different flavor outcomes, and then head into our packaging. And that's the last step before it heads out of Smoking Goose and onto your dinner table.
So we're standing in the aging room here at Smoking Goose, and it kind of smells a little bit like brie, like that rind that you have on blooming rind cheeses. I mean, there's just a lot of aroma, and it's kind of cold, and it's a little bit damp.
Definitely what you feel and smell is also what the salami feels and smells, and spending this much time in here, it'll eventually take on part of that. So
all of these meats are moldy, and they're supposed to be.
Yep.
This is part of the natural aging process. So explain what this beneficial mold is doing to the meat, and how it gets there, and why this is something that you're actually trying to achieve.
Yeah. And believe it or not, I mean, and similar to cheese, we want it for two main reasons. One is to fight off any bacteria or molds that we don't want. So the stronger that our mold and our flora is in this room, the less likely we are to take on any undesirable mold. And then the second reason is to help the drying process. Without the molds, it'll dry too quickly on the surface, and we'll get what we call like case hardening, where the outside dries quicker than the center. We want a real even, slow drying process, and the mold helps protect the surface from drying too rapidly.
So some of them have like blue spots, kind of like blue cheese. Others kind of have a really fuzzy, almost puffy surface to them, kind of like a brie. Are those different molds? Are they the same?
They're all the same. They all start out the same, but they typically change based on the amount of fermentable sugars. Color in some of these molds are good, the green, light blue, I mean really light gray is kind of ideal. But a lot of those things can happen from what's in the air or what is in the salami as well. Some of them are not desirable, and some of them we fight off constantly. And we do that through different ways. We do it through brushing and cleaning, washing with acidification, that sort of thing that'll help eliminate those. That's all part of keeping a really healthy room and a healthy environment and keeping your mold really strong.
So when you take a freshly tied sausage and you pull it in here, or the slabs of bellies that are hanging, do you apply anything, or do you just sit it in the room and just let it do its thing?
Yeah, by that point, if it's a salami or a sausage, we've inoculated it with bacteria.
Okay.
And then it's gone through fermentation. So during that fermentation, it's in an environment that promotes the growth of that bacteria. That's typically about 80 degrees, can take about 36 hours for that. Also in that process, it starts to drop the pH level. You know, we're trying to reach a specific pH. A lot of it has to do with the quality of animals that we're buying and how they're raised, how they're being slaughtered, all those types of things. And then the introduction of bacteria will further lower that pH so that it's stable enough that we can age it in a room like this, but not so low that it's going to retain water further. So that's an important step in the process. This is Dodge City, one of our original ones. This is pink peppercorns and fennel pollen. So it's kind of our style of a Pinocchiona. This is Delaware Fireball. Pork shoulder, color trim, and then Espelette pepper, smoked paprika, black pepper, and then salt cultures. This is Culatello, which is boneless, part of the ham. We do that one a little bit different than our bone-in ham. That one is just red wine and salt. And then those are stuffed into a bladder, tied real beautifully and aged. Those are about 9 to 12 months age.
The prosciutto that's hanging over here.
Yeah.
Those are gorgeous.
Yeah, they're awesome, aren't they?
Yes. How long have they been hanging there?
I'd have to check, but I think we probably have some that are approaching maybe 3 to 4 years.
Seriously?
Yeah. And I think the oldest one we've ever had has been almost 5 years.
The idea of leaving meat to hang for years
Yeah.
is probably almost a foreign concept to most people who are like, you should eat meat immediately or it's
Right.
going to spoil.
Yeah.
But before refrigeration, before freezers, when you slaughter your hogs or slaughter your cows, you have to find a way to preserve that that harvest.
Yeah.
And this is the way that it was done.
Yeah. It's amazing that it's, gone on this long.
King Dough's pizza features hand-stretched mozzarella, a highly hydrated dough, and tons of local products, including Smoking Goose's charcuterie.
You can go to any city in America. If you throw a rock, you're going to hit a pizza shop. So it's kind of a dime a dozen restaurant situation. So you really have to shine and show respect to the ingredients that you're going to be using. We're not making it ourselves. We're going to really incredible people. They do the great things that we can't do. I would describe Chris Eley as a good old boy, I guess you would say. He's one of the nicest people I have ever met in this city, in this industry specifically. He's a hardworking dude. The minute that we opened up our doors 4 years ago, Smoking Goose was the first person that we went to. It was like, you guys are like the real deal. You're serious about this.
So now Adam is going to show me how these pies starring
Yes.
Smoking Goose products are made.
Right, yes. We're making the grape and gorgonzola right now. You're basically pushing all that gas that's been created by the natural yeast out to the crust. So you get like that nice bubbly leoparding char. Once you're at a nice circle, kind of put it on the backs of your hands. So you're on your knuckles, not on your fingertips.
Okay.
And just kind of like let mostly gravity do the work.
How long did it take you to figure this out?
Oh, only 15 years.
Good, I've got 15
Yeah,
minutes.
For sure, good. So then from there, fresh mozzarella. There's a little bit in every bite. The grapes, and then the gorgonzola, and that is it for this part of the pizza.
Okay.
I'm gonna throw this guy in the oven now.
All right. I don't think mine looks too bad for a
No,
first
this
time.
is beautiful. That is a round pizza, yeah.
It's round.
It's great. It looks incredible. So yeah, we're gonna throw it onto the pan here. I always hit my cutter on the table for some reason before I ever use it.
You be you, Adam.
We've got some honey,
So this is the Culatello.
some Culatello.
It is paper thin.
It is super thin.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
A little bit of arugula and a little Parmigiano. That's grape and gorgonzola.
Perfect.
You start with the ingredient that you really want to shine on the pizza, kind of like the andouille. It's on a pizza we have called the andouille punk, and it's the focus. And from there, you just kind of like figure out what makes sense with it. It's a really soft, a little bit crunchy, highly spicy sausage, so you need to have some, fatty milk stuff on there. And it's got ranch on there, which I know is like blasphemy in some pizza circles, but I'm from the South and ranch runs in my veins.
All right, so if you're in Indianapolis, you need to come here to King Dough, eat this pizza. Thanks, Adam.
Absolutely, thank you.
When Chris decided to open his butcher shop, the food movement hadn't quite made it to Indianapolis yet, and so he spent an entire year crisscrossing the state of Indiana looking for farmers.
I knew that we had to find suppliers that we could build relationships with, that they really cared about their product, that their livelihood depended on that product, that we weren't just a number to them or just another account to them. And I don't even know if I necessarily consider like it has to be local, but to me at the time it just made more sense like to build these relationships that people that were close to us, that were also doing really good quality. And knowing that you're benefiting a small group of people in a larger way rather than a large group of people in a very small way. And so yeah, we spent a lot of times at a lot of different farms, a lot of different producers. I just really enjoyed that part of it. Dave Fisher, he came back from corporate world to farm his family's land, primarily raising cattle, beef cattle. All the beef in our butcher shop and a lot of beef that we use at Smoking Goose is from his farm.
You are the only person who is supplying beef to Chris.
Right.
And that partnership came about because he had a certain level of demand.
Right.
And you were like, if you want me to meet that, we have to make it so that this is an exclusive partnership.
Right, and it works well for both of us, and that really helped us marketing wise. I can go to other chefs and say we're the sole supplier to Goose the Market and Chris Eley. And he's got such a great reputation and knows his meat so well. I always look for him also for feedback.
What a great relationship.
Yeah. Really enjoy working with Chris.
We're standing here in the middle of one of Dave's fields, and behind us are mamas with their babies who are only about, 2 months old?
Yes, the babies were born in late April, so yeah, some of them even younger than that.
A lot of people are talking about what cows eat, like
Sure.
Corn versus grass. Kind of talk about why you feed what you feed to your animals.
Sure. So they'll start off born out on pasture. All our calves are born out on pasture. They'll stay with their mamas for about 6 months. By the time they're 6 months old, they're already 600 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we'll take the calf away from the mama, and then at that time we're feeding them a diet of grass, but we'll also supplement it with distiller's grains, as well as maybe some silage that we make from either corn or from grass. What we're trying to do is to make sure their entire life they're gaining at least 2 pounds per day. And we really pride ourselves on getting that fat throughout the filet, the New York strip, the sirloin, any of those cuts. I always say it should taste like it's been buttered from the inside out.
And I'm sure that this is why, when Chris, and he's looking for that full flavor, not only in the butcher case, but then to make all of these sausages and charcuterie out of, having that fat permeate the entire animal is critical for him.
It is, and you want every bite to have that. That is not just one cut.
Greg Gunthorpe of Gunthorpe Farms is a 4th-generation hog farmer, and he is also one of the top 3 pastured poultry producers in the country. He's been working with Chris for about 15 years, dating back to when Chris was a chef in Chicago.
Chris was actually the reason that we started selling into Indianapolis. We were only selling into Chicago at the time, so 11, 12 years ago, we started delivering to Indianapolis also. And it's been a great relationship with Smoking Goose.
So how many hogs are you raising right now?
We do about 50 a week. We raise about 2,500 a year.
How does the eating experience change by the way that the animal is raised?
Our pigs take a little bit longer to get to market, and I think that it takes some time to be able to develop some flavor. I think the faster you push anything, animal, fruit, vegetable, the less chance it has for flavor. And then they have variety in their diet. I think that makes a big difference. We feed a corn, soybean diet, but then they also get to eat roots and bugs and grass. And then, just the fact that they get to exercise. Another factor is we go to an awful lot of steps to make their life and the end as low as stress as possible, and I think that plays a big factor in the flavor of the product.
So Greg actually has a processing plant on the farm, which is highly unusual. What is the impact of that?
You know, the animals never have to actually leave the farm. It's just a completely different experience than for a pig to get loaded up on a semi, headed off to a plant that's going to do 8,000 of them per hour. It makes a big difference, I think.
Yeah, difference for the pig and difference for the person who's eating it.
Right, exactly.
So we're standing in Greg's pasture-raised chicken operation. This is 70 acres that's fenced in?
Yep. And normally they like to go out and graze first thing in the morning, last thing before the sun goes down. And they'll go out about 7,500 feet from their house, and then they come back to their own house.
This truly is a pasture operation, but there are very few people doing what you're doing.
There's a really, really small number of people. It's a very, very small percentage of the chicken production. In the United States, produce about 8.7 billion chickens annually. Billion, yes. And you know, that's only about half a dozen chicken operations that own the majority of those. Fraction of a percentage of chickens are actually owned by independent producers in the United States. And then a fraction of that's actually raised on pasture.
But this is the way that it was always done.
This was the way that it was always done. You know, it comes back to that mind frame that I have that chicken should taste like chicken, and if it's not raised where they can actually eat a little bit of grass, they can actually move, it's probably not going to taste like chicken.
So Smoking Goose is your biggest
Turkey
customer?
Yes. We actually started doing turkeys because of Chris. We started doing turkeys, the whole birds, that first year for Goose to Market, and it doubled every year for our turkeys. We have about 8,000 turkeys on the farm.
That's a lot. And now we're going to step inside here at Goose the Market. This is where it all began. It started out as Goose the Market in over 12 years.
Yeah.
Now you're supplying 46 states with charcuterie and fresh sausages and all these wonderful things.
Right. It's funny to say out loud sometimes. It doesn't feel like it's been more than a decade. You know, in many ways it does feel like just yesterday that we were making 3 slabs of bacon at a pop. But it has grown, which I think says a lot about our community. You know, that folks were hungry for what we were making, that they were excited to come to the table and support what we were doing, and then down the line be able to support the farmers, be able to support the distributors. And it says a lot about the way that people want to eat in the States right now.
What makes Chris's products so interesting is not just that he's sourcing from local family farms, but that he's taking these old world techniques and he's giving them a modern Midwest spin. So we're going to wrap up our episode here at Sun King Brewery in Indianapolis, and Chris has a couple of outposts at 2 Sun King locations called Oka. Oka means goose.
Yep.
And you can see that it just has this amazing array of beer-friendly food.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what we wanted to do to kind of bring all this together for you at home was show you how to make kind of the perfect charcuterie tray, because that's the best way to really experience your work, is just to have it by itself. So kind of take us through what we should do at home to work with your product.
You do go to slice it, definitely colder is a little bit better so that the fats don't smear or spread. But in terms of serving it, definitely want to allow it to come up to room temperature. So if you build a board ahead of time, you can store it in your fridge for a couple hours, but maybe an hour or so before you serve it, you want to pull it out and let it come up to room temperature.
Okay, so show us how to put one together.
Sure. Well, you know, a big part of what I like to teach people initially is just selection. And the selection is all about balance, in my opinion. You know, think about a variety of types of things. So when I look at a board that's complete, I like to think of it as like a patchwork quilt. You know, like when you look at a quilt and it's like your grandmother put all these little patches together, and then this is what it should kind of look like. We will start off with a smoked fennel sausage. We have some sliced sopressata, whey-fed Dodge City. This is the Culinary ham. We'll do some cheeses. We'll start off with the Trillium. This other cheese here is the Brianna. And one last cheese here, this is the Pyramid from Caprini. We have some pickled blueberries here, olives, pickles, our mustard, spent grain crackers.
You can just keep piling everything on.
You can keep going, keep going. But again, variety, textures, colors. You're really looking for eye-popping, eye-catching, richness, all kinds of stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's delicious. Thank you, Chris.
My pleasure.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Well, for more tips from Chris and recipes using his amazing charcuterie, just head to wearetastemakers.com. You're going to find more information on him as well as all the other makers that we featured in this series. Thank you for joining me here in Indianapolis, and I will see you next time. Connect with us online at wearetastemakers.com or through social media on these handles.
tasteMAKERS was funded in part by...
What does a craftsperson look like? Is it this? Or this? Or is it this? Is it possible a craftsperson might also look like this? Edward Jones salutes the makers who share their expertise and take pride in their craft.